Capture One Express for Fujifilm is an extraordinary software for absolutely free of cost. Although I am loyal to SilkyPix Developer Studio Pro, but I believe that Capture One Express for Fujifilm is worth a mention, and for free, it does a very good job, very efficient. You have almost all the tools that you need. And I hope the guys at SilkyPix Developer Studio taking note, because that software is an extraordinary software and I am loyal to that software, although they could really improve the speed. And Capture One Express for Fujifilm is exactly that. It's very, very fast. Now, let me explain you in this Capture One Express for Fujifilm video from import to the adjustment and to the export. So let's jump into that tutorial. Now, first of all, I although have two photos ready, and I went all the way to Spain to take those photos myself. Yep, that's what I do for my dear viewers. And by the way, this tutorial is made on request. So one of my subscribers actually requested me to take a look at this software, so I'm doing it right now. Yep, so at this point I'm not doing any kind of tutorials on my own. I'm taking requests, so if you're having any of requests, if I can do that, I will definitely take a look. Anyway, and just before I go, currently my YouTube channel is transmitting travel videos in Europe, and all the photographs are taken in Fujifilm X-T20 and across film simulation. So that would be an extraordinary series to look at if you are really curious. Now, first of all, this is how the interface look like, right? On the top, you have the typical file, edit, image, adjustment, select, camera, view, window, help. Those are the buttons that almost no one look at. So I'm not going to go there. Time to time, you may need the preferences where you need to do some kind of adjustment, but that's for another. Today, it's just overall adjustment. And after, you have import. So in the top bar, first of all, you have the import, export, pretty straightforward, next to each other, very good. You have the reset, undo, redo. You see, those are generally tend to be in between file and edit. So they decided to put them there because those are the tools that we usually use quite a lot. Then you have the auto adjustment. Personally, I don't really use it because it gives mixed results sometimes. Now you have the basic cursor tools, of course, the pointers, the hand crop tool, rotation tool, and then do the basic color selection. Depends on you. I will talk about it later. And apply adjustment tool. Essentially, you just do a copy and paste. And you have the before and after. You have the grid, and my personal favorite, exposure warning on top. Let me show you how does it work. So you click it, and it's showing the part of the place are a little bit overexposed and part of the place which is a little bit underexposed, and colors are red for overexposed and blue for underexposed. Good thing is that you also have a button dedicated to learn your things. So you click it and it should take you to a window where you have all the necessary tutorials available. And now you have the edit selected, copy and paste. So basically, there you go. That's the part that all the tutorials available for Capture One Express for Fujifilm users. Take a look if you always got stuck somewhere. Highly recommended. Now, you already know what happened into the top bar, obviously. Let's start with the import. How you import photo into Capture One Express for Fujifilm. Now you click, I already have photos there, but I'm going to show you. Import, you click it. Now, when you click import, you have many ways to import your photos because it almost works same as the Adobe Lightroom. So you create catalog, libraries and all this stuff, but you can do straightforward, such as you can import from, click choose, and obviously you have a bunch of photos somewhere nearby. Let's say I'm going to go, for an example, to a folder in social media, and let's say I have this photo, this one. So I'm going to click it and click review for import. Now it's in the window already. It's not there yet. You haven't imported yet. You just selected the photo. Now you can do many things with that. So you can import to create a folder wherever you like. Depends. In your C drive, in your external hard drive, whatever. So I have mine selected. You can create a subfolder. And good thing is that it also shows how much space left, which is very important. Backup too, so enable backup. So you can also create another folder, third folder, where you can create a backup folder just in case things goes wrong. And then you can name it, which is amazing. So you can do a proper renaming of your files. This is extraordinary. Metadata is also important. So you can put your name, email, description about your photos. And when you click the photo, it probably shows all the, you see, just right now, it shows all the details of the photograph in the file info. Now, here's another interesting thing here. Now, if you click this auto adjust, what happens is that once you import at the same time, it applies all kind of auto adjustment on the photos already. So it kind of try to save your work quite a bit. Personally, I don't use it, but this is extraordinary. Or let's say you have separate kind of adjustment to apply on. Let's say you have your own look. You know, think about the Lightroom, you have a lot of presets. So you can actually select one of the preset and all the photos will be imported, already applied your preset. Extraordinary. Now you must be wondering like, hey, I don't want the same look on all my photos. So there where the things get interesting, because you can change it later, of course, because at the end of the day, you are importing raw, I hope. And after import, imagining that you are importing directly from the card, you can click eject card or erase after copying. I don't recommend it. You eject the card, that's fine, but you never erase images after copying. I say you separately make a copy in another location. Always safe than sorry. I'm going to cancel it because I don't need to import anything, but you got the idea. I hope I explained it clearly. Now, we went past the import. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the thumbnail at the bottom. Let's see. You have one photo and two photos. So thumbnail is quite a common thing. Almost every single software has it. Now, you have different way to show your photos. Like you have the normal traditional one, the thumbnail version. You have the serial version, like 1, 2, 3, 4, pretty classic. And good thing about that is shows all the information that you need at the same time. You don't necessarily have to look at separately or click metadata somewhere here. You have all the information that you need. Date, f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, all the basic and important stuff. If you don't like it, the third one, you might be thinking like, hey, this looks exactly the same as the first one, the grid mode. The difference is that in the grid mode, let's say you want to make more space, right? And photo becomes smaller, the main photo, but those one remains the same. Imagine you have 200 photos, you would have seen 200 of them right there. And if you click this, you see what happened. So it actually depends on the size of the space. You're making the photo bigger and smaller. Good thing about this technique, which is you will be looking at the actual photo all at the same time. It takes a lot of pressure on the software, but it's very convenient. So if you have a good and powerful software with a really big screen, I highly recommend to use that one instead. Now you got the thumbnail option. Now this is the main window. So main window, obviously, you know that this is where you get to see all the work. You can zoom in and out on the top right corner in the main window. You can also at the same time mark them like that. 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, whatever you like. Now, let me show you the headquarters of this software, which is here. So starting with the library. So library works exactly the same way as Lightroom. So Lightroom, you have the library option, you tag them, you put them in the catalog, and etc. Exactly the same. So library, this is where if you delete it, this is where the trash. So all the photos will be there. And then it will show you the recent imports, all images, and all the folders where you have imported originally your catalog. You can delete your catalog or create a new one with add folder or plus button. Very, very intuitive. Personally speaking, me, if I'm talking about myself, I am not the big fan of cataloging system. I edit on the go and copy my raw files separately on my own term, remaining by myself. So I'm a little old school, but those who are really familiar with the cataloging in Lightroom, for example, Capture One is the next best thing or exactly the same best thing. Highly recommended. So you got the basic idea of how the library works, but this is not where you do the edit. Main edit happens, before I go, after that you have the filter. Now, filter is where you do your tagging. So again, you rate them with your star. You rate them, also tag them with the color. Something I'm familiar with in Silky Pixel Developer Studio Pro as well. You can select your photo. If you have a big library, just like the Lightroom has, you can go to the time, date, day, everything, and then select your photos. Mine one was taken in 2020. My goodness, February. Guess what? Just before the unicorn virus. Anyway, that's for another story. Then you have the place, and at this point, nothing is tagged, so you don't have anything. But you can change them if you want to. Right, so I explained the library part. Now we are going to the Q, which stands for quick. What does it mean? Photo editing is almost like being in the kitchen. What I mean to say that, you have all the tools that you need, but you cannot start your cooking without a fry pan or a saucepan first, oil, salt, pepper, knife, and a chopping board, and things that you need to cook the raw food. This is where you have all the first thing that you possibly need to edit a photo. You have your histogram, you have your white balance, and white balance, you have all the preset, or you have the automatic. I'm going to click automatic to show you if it's working. It works. Or if you have a white card or gray card, you can use the dropper. For example, I just dropped on the green part, so it just changed the color to something else. Or you can manually change them if you like. And then you have exposure. Again, you all know what it is, but I'm going to show you, of course. Exposure, you have the little one button to do automatic exposure correction. So I'm going to do that right now. So it does its job, right? Or you can independently change all the exposure, contrast, brightness, and saturation. And this button that I keep clicking, I didn't tell you what it is. I should have. It's the reset button. So you have an independent reset button after all the adjustment slider, or you have the global reset button. If you want to, you can use whatever you prefer. And now you have the high dynamic range HDR. Of course, you know that, which is essentially the highlight, shadow, white, and black. Again, you have the magic wand. You can click the magic wand, try to fix as much as it can. You can reset, or you can individually change highlight, shadow, white point, or black point. Very, very intuitive. Then I'm going to close it so that I have extra room. Clarity, you have the neutral clarity, you have the punch, let's change it to punchy, or you have classic. Now, clarity is something that I rarely use it actually, but it's something that really important for architectural photograph. But if you're shooting portrait, you don't want to add too much clarity because it already looks a bit punchy already, right? It depends on the photo by photo, of course, but you got the idea about the clarity. Structure is basically the same thing. It works different way. It's one of those, it's like sharpening, but it's not exactly the sharpening. Works, and highly heavy use of any of those two are not recommended. Just always use mildly. My goodness, I need some water. And then of course, then you have sharpening, obviously. So you got to do some, it's already applied the sharpening here, like a default sharpening, and you can change it based on your personal taste. You have the amount and radius and threshold. Now, if you're thinking, hey, what is the amount, radius, and threshold? Like, I speak English only. I don't speak French or Russian. No, this doesn't sound like English. So you add your amount. Amount could be anything. Don't worry about it. I mean, you just stick with the default. If you don't know what is going on, stick with the default. The radius is basically, it's put an extent on your amount, basically saying that more radius means that it goes to everywhere. Threshold, it's essentially, if you put 1, you try to save all the soft surface and only try to add sharpening on the edges. Again, my recommendation, always do 100% zoom, and then always pay attention to the details. Don't ever over sharpen. And second of all, if it's a portrait, then don't even try not to sharpen at all, because modern cameras and lenses are sharp enough already. Now, then you have, I'm going to close that one. The sharpening is one of the tools that you need in a quick section. And then crop. Obviously, we all need time to time a little bit of cropping. We all do. And this is a cropping tool that you need. I'm going to double click and show you just a little demonstration. Either you can click the crop here, unconstrain it, and click this tool. You always have to click this tool and then go back and forth like that, from the left to right, top to bottom. And once you're done, you unclick it, close it, and go back to the little arrow button. And then you have the rotation and flip. Rotation and flip, we all know, because if you sometimes take a photo that's not straight enough, you can of course, go back and forth. Good thing is that in this new version, you have this one auto adjust. If you click it, it try to fix it, but not always. Like I said, I click it right now and it's showing me a thing. Some of the selected variant could not be auto adjusted. Don't know why. It doesn't work. I'm gonna try in this one. Let's see if it's working. It could be because it's Fuji, I guess. Anyway, if you can do that, you can do manual. It's working already. And then flip, I guess, is what I would imagine. Horizontal and vertical. I mean, who would do that? Come on. Anyway, so quick is a section where you potentially need, not want, but need all the tools to do your global adjustment. And generally, if your photo is already well exposed and has no problem, you should good to go from that. You don't need to move on to the next places unless you are editing junkie. Now, once you are done, let's say I'm going to do a little change here, make it a little cold. And let's say you have a grid saying before, after. So you can click it, before, after. So before and after. You see? Pretty easy. And of course, you have a grid here. You can turn on the grid if you like. Looks like you are behind the jail in the winter time. And the exposure warning is another important thing that I'd like to show you, which is sky is really overexposed. So we're going to fix it later in another place, because remember, it doesn't look like overexposed, but our software is saying that it's overexposed. And if you look at the histogram, everything is fine except this blue line. So saying that only and only the blue part of the photo is overexposed and everything else is fine. So bear in mind, because we're going to get to it later, how to fix it. Because you don't need, first of all, the highlight. You just need, because the highlight going to pull down all the highlight globally of everything. The places already perfectly light and the one that not fixed. So you don't want that kind of fixing, because it's doing a good and bad at the same time. You need local adjustment, kind of like adjusting the blue. So remember that, we're getting there. So you got the quick idea. And next to it, you have the adjustment. Now here is the fun part. Here, I'm going to close everything. You have all your styles and presets. So of course, again, like I said at the very beginning of the importation, you may have custom style. So you can create your own style and save it here. So I have mine saved. Looks pretty crazy, right? But that's how it is. or you have built-in style, like a Capture One would give you some nice and awesome look. Let's take a look at some of them. That's the Landscape IQ Professor. This one that I personally like, which is Spring. Pretty cool, huh? I like this really kind of muted brownish look. Pretty awesome. Works in every way. It works for landscape, works for portrait. Anyway, so this is where you have all your styles and presets. Let me get some water. My mouth is dry. And now we are moving to the lens. So this is where you do your lens correction. So I'm going to get rid of the grid. Now, starting from the top, I already explained how the crop works. So crop already exists in the Q button. Grid, I already show you. In the top, you already have a grid. So either you can use that. Or you can use here. And in the grid section, you particularly have color. So you can change the color. For now, you have red. You can change it to yellow, purple, blue. Like if you're a big fan of rainbow, you have the option. Now, lens correction, generally you have a list. And remember, all of them can be manually changed. Like now, I can change them manually. You see that? So don't play with them already, because the Fuji lenses are pretty awesome and they fix their lenses quite well. So I personally don't play with them. Purple fringing, if you have a really strong bright light and then a lot of fringing going on, you can defringe them. One thing I personally like is the vignette. So you can add or reduce vignette. Sometimes it works, in this case, I want to emphasize on the middle part. So you can add vignette if you like to. You have the option. Now, moving on to exposure. So let's go there. So exposure is essentially a tonal contrast. You have some of them in the Q quick button, but here you have more. So I already explained you the exposure section. So let's skip that. I already explained the high dynamic range. So let's skip that one too. Now, interesting part, you have the levels and curve. So if you're a Photoshop user or something similar like Affinity Photo, you already know what levels does, which is, I'm going to explain. Your far left is the shadow, middle is the midtone, far right is the highlight. And now, if you pull the bottom one down, you're adding highlights. If you are pulling the top bar of the far right, you're reducing highlight. Keep an eye on the photo and keep an eye on histogram. I'm going left, it's going back where it belongs. I'm going here, it's going where it belongs. Right? Same goes for the midtone. Look this one up. I'm going, that is adding more in the midtone. Essentially, this is brightness. Trust me. This is exactly same as brightness, but bit more manual control. This is the shadow. So you can either add shadow or contrast in that case. You can reduce shadow, but it looks too naked to me. You need a little bit of contrast. But you have the option if you want to go crazy. You have the dropper to add shadow. Let's say this is my maximum shadow that I prefer. Highlight, that's my maximum highlight that I prefer. For example, you have that option to add the dropper. I'm going to click reset, or you can use this magic wand, auto adjust, and it will do automatic adjustment for you. So that's level. Now reset, and I'm going to leave level open, go to curve. Now you should know about curve. If you don't, I highly recommend you to read more about curve. In my channel, I have plenty of video explaining curve. Essentially, simple is that if you know how to use curve, you don't need any of those, honestly. You just don't need anything else when it comes to exposure, contrast, except just curve. Forget about other things. This is the oldest tool of the photography history and still as powerful as it was before. And I don't think it will ever change. So the curves is that, remember in the levels, I added highlight, right? I can do the same thing here. But remember that in the shadow, I added shadow. In the levels, I can do that in the curves too. Sorry, that way. Remember in the shadow on levels, I can reduce shadow. Check this out in the curves. Remember in levels, I could reduce highlight. I can do this here too. Beam. Remember in levels, I could add brightness, reduce brightness. Oop, click that to reset. In curves, add brightness, reduce brightness. But now that's the similarity. And that's how far can goes. In curves, you can control every single portion of the photograph. I cannot emphasize enough. Let's say you want to emphasize on the girl's face. Make sure that you already know where it is. This is the woman's face right there. And now you want to protect this white part because you're saying that, hey, this is too strong. I don't want to blow it already more than it is. So you already just did a dropper there so that it is protected. Now you can change the woman face brightness without blowing the white part. That's how powerful it is. You can do anything. You can do anything with the curve. Once you know how to use the curve properly, you don't need any of those. Exposure, dynamic range, the levels, seriously. These are just given so that some people, we are not all same. We don't have all the same capabilities. We don't have, we are not same. That's it. We are not perfect. So some needs different type of tools in order to do the same job. We all are like that. So this is, my friends, the curve is for those who knows everything and the rest who wants to do exactly the same thing and find curves a bit more complicated. Therefore, you have levels, you have the high dynamic range, you have the exposure. So my point is, at the end of the day, you don't need all of them. You need one or another, and curve has the most amount of control. So learn as much as you can curve. You'll be just fine. So I explained a lot about the exposure part. Now there's another fun part. Color, ladies and gentlemen. And this is where the fun begins, especially when you are using Fujifilm, because who doesn't like the Fujifilm simulation, right? I'm starting with the basic characteristics. This is where you change your film simulation. The ICC profile is already been selected. Fujifilm X-T20 generic. Now you must be wondering, first of all, one, why it calls a generic instead of just Fujifilm X-T20? And second, why you have a lot of other camera profile? Let's starting with the first one. Generic means this is not the actual Fujifilm ICC profile. It's the Capture One version of the Fujifilm X-T20 version, not the actual Fuji one. For actual one, only way you can get the actual Fujifilm simulation is in camera Fuji, or you use the Fuji X converter or SilkyPix Developer Studio Pro. Those are the software. The only one will give you the film simulation created by Fujifilm. Capture One generic is the Capture One's reverse engineered version. So keep that in mind. And a curve is where you want to change your film simulation. Now you have all the good things that you need. Astia, Acros, those, I love all of them. So if you want looking for something, all the actual full Fujifilm simulation, you have them. here's another interesting thing. See that linear response right there? This is what for the professional ones, like when I say professional, I'm talking about the photo magazines and the product photography photographers, because the linear response basically it get rid of all the custom picture profile slapped on by the camera manufacturers and make it neutral so that you can create your own version completely from the scratch. So I highly recommend if you are a perfectionist and purist, linear response is your way to go. So I'm going to leave it in, I don't know, Eterna, for example, in this case, because, it looks a little bit like a film look, to be honest. I love it. And for that, for Giralda in Seville, I'm going to go for, let's say, film standard. Why not? And while we are here, I'm going to turn on the exposure warning. And when you go turn on the exposure warning, you don't have the red thing anymore, the overexposed part. So I'm going to go back, actually change it to Velvia. Now when I go to Velvia, the sky is blown, basically meaning that the blue is too much. Now, before I fix that, I'm going to go to the second one, white balance. I already explained what white balance is, because white balance is color, so it's part of the color type, obviously. One of the most used tool in photography editing. In the color editor, you have the global. This is basically HSL tool. In Lightroom, you have exactly the same thing. In SilkyPix Developer, you have exactly the same thing. In DxO Photolab 4, you have exactly the same thing. So you can pick global color, so you can desaturate or add saturation. You can change the global hue completely, make it look like a Disneyland if you want to. Up to you. You are the artist. You do whatever you want. Or in this case, you're saying that, hey, everything looks fine, but the sky is overblown. I got to fix it. How I'm going to fix it? So you click this tool, click on it, on the sky. You see it automatically changed to blue. Now, because it's all about, you have two problems here, potentially. One, either is oversaturated, or you have too much light, or you have both. So you can either reduce the lightness, problem solved, or you can reduce saturation, problem solved. So now you know how the color editor works. This is a phenomenal piece of tool. Let's, for example, here, personally, I believe that the red is too punchy. You have a lot of problem. You have the green and red everywhere. But let's just start with the sky. So I can click this tool right on the sky and reduce the lightness. You see the background almost fixed. And now to me the red is too strong. So I click the red and reduce a little bit of saturation. Right? Not too much, not go all the way down. You see the red is completely changed. It's pretty amazing, right? So you basically changed the color of a particular part of the photo. So I'm going to reduce just a little bit. So anyway, that's how the whole tool works, and this is extraordinary. Highly recommend you manipulate and use it as much as you can. This is a very good tool. Now, black and white, my personal favorite. So first of all, when you enable it, it's become black and white, obviously, but now you have a little slider there, right? What happened is that, let's say, remember the lady here wearing a red dress. Now, you can change this specific red channel more or less, but also remember the red channel also corresponds to human skin, because we are more or less on the same zone from brown to red. So it will affect a little bit the skin tone, but don't worry too much about it. And you can play with it, like for example, the sky tend to be blue or cyan, let's say. So I'm going to play with the blue a little bit. Let's say if it's affecting. Can you see that? Remember, interestingly, blue is also correspond to shadow, because generally in a color photography, shadow is generally blue. Remember that shadow is always generally blue in shadow area. So when you change blue, it's not going to just change the sky, it will also change a little bit on shadow area. Remember that. And cyan would not be that far. Let's say cyan is the lighter version of the blue, easily speaking. Magenta also plays a big role in red area, but not as strong. Greenery, of course, we all know what greenery does, is mostly the foliage. Right, so you get an idea about black and white. Interesting and amazing. I love it. I'm a personally big fan of black and white photography. Now we are almost at the end of this tutorial, and now from black and white we're going to the details, the detail tab. So you turn on the navigator. The reason why you have the navigator here, because you're going to apply sharpening, noise reduction and clarity. Generally in this tab you always zoom into 100% at least, and then you apply your sharpening and noise reduction. You never do that in the globally, you always zoom into 100%. And this is where the navigator comes, because you can actually move on here just with the navigation tool. And then I already explained you the sharpening, so explanation is not necessary. Noise reduction, okay, this is a very dangerous place. So I personally recommend you to stick to the minimum. That's fine, like leave it to the default. Don't worry about it manipulating way too much unless it looks too soft. Okay, play a little bit, go back and forth, but don't play with it too much, because this section requires a lot of experience and a lot of practice. And one single tutorial like mine will never solve a problem, I promise you. I know that a lot of YouTube tutorials and those folks do that a lot. They try to explain this section in one go. But at the end of the day, this is you who are going to take a photo and then have to practice this and learn your own camera. So don't let somebody else tell you what to do. You got to practice on your own and figure out how this tool works. But just to explain the slider, luminance is generally the sensor luminance noise reduction. The detail, generally when you do the noise reduction, the detail slider being like the back, my goodness, what happening to my English? Oh my God. So detail slider bring back the details which was originally would have been lost by luminance noise reduction. Color is basically the color noise. So let's go to the 0. Nothing happened because the Fuji is already a fantastic sensor, have almost 0 noise. But you still can see a little bit in that section. I'm going to zoom in on there and zoom even more. Let's say there. You can see a little bit of noise there. So that was original noise of the color. If you go to 50 as it was, now it disappeared. So that's why I'm saying don't worry too much about it. Leave it to the default. Clarity is another one. Generally, it's placed as a different type of sharpening. Although many would disagree, but it is actually a little bit of sharpening, but it's a different type of sharpening. It plays with the luminance, which means it's a contrast slider, but it's like a micro contrast slider. I'll go all the way to 100. See what happened. I'll go all the way to 0. It becomes soft. Personally, for portrait or human photos, I recommend reducing the color clarity instead of adding clarity. Structure does the same thing. It's also some kind of sharpening. You have many kind of sharpening here. So I recommend you to calm down and don't add too much sharpening. Leave it. If your photo is already sharp, don't over sharp it. And if you don't know if it's sharp or not because you've been looking at the screen for a long time, take a break. Stop. Read a book. Watch the television, go for a walk, 5 minutes, not much, move a little bit, come back and start again. Always learn to know when you have to take a break. So take a break, come back and restart. You know whether or not you need sharpening. All right. So we are done with the detail tab. Finally, not finally, there's one more to go because I haven't gone to the export yet. So you have the metadata. In metadata, you have all the details of the photograph here, something that I almost never use. And the keyword, of course, if you tagged it or whatever it is, you have all the information there. This tab is probably the least used tab of my life. So you got the idea. It's basically similar to the Lightroom, where you try to find your photograph by keyword using. Now let's go straight to export. So you're done your editing, so you want to export it. In the export tab, you have many options. First of all, destination, as usual, you gotta put it somewhere, my friend, right? So you gotta select a folder where you want to export your photograph. Now remember, in the import section, you could rename your photo. In the export, if you forgot to change your photo at the beginning or want to put a different naming, you can also do that in export. So export has a naming too. Pretty amazing. Export recipe. You have the basic one. So we have DNG, JPEG, Quick Proof, PNG, TIFF. And I select TIFF because sometime I need to do something in Photoshop or wherever. So I always export in TIFF. And in TIFF, you have uncompressed or zip. You have the ICC profile. There's a lot of it. Unless you are working for a magazine company or kind of heavy production company with super expensive professional editing display, stick with sRGB as it is, because almost 99% of the world screen of telephone, television, monitor are sRGB. I don't care what others say, but if you use sRGB, you'll be just fine. Period. Because by the way, I heard there is another guy that I had a fight with, not fight really, fight sounds very extreme, more like an argument in a forum saying that, but I need to pick the, let's say, Pro Photo, because Pro Photo has the maximum amount of information, it has a more depth and everything. Yeah, but it doesn't make any change if your screen is sRGB. So essentially your photo look like a mashed potato if you export in Pro Photo, because your screen couldn't handle the amount of color information of your photo. And if I don't make any sense, stick with sRGB, right? So I'm going to go back to sRGB, and because the Capture One is originally made for professional medium format photography, and the Phase One is a company of that camera, medium format camera. So they have client that has extraordinary needs, but ordinary people like us who just do photography for fun or is as a hobby, as something that as a break from our day-to-day life, you don't need to go too far. You just enjoy photography. That's it. Don't go into too much of a technical thing. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. Anyway, stick with sRGB. You'll be fine. And then you can either open with whatever you have in your photo. Let's say you want to export straight to the Topaz Denoise AI, as I have, or Affinity Photo, like say, what's the name? Photoshop, for example. You can do that, or you don't. And in adjustment, why you are exporting your photo? Are you exporting your photo to print? Are you exporting your photo for screen, like a smartphone, whatever? Or you just don't want it at all, you want to add later. So you have that option, it's a export output sharpening, and click export. Easy peasy Japanesey. Now I'm gonna get rid of there. I'm gonna bring my woman back. Thanks to her for giving us a dance in Sevilla in Spain just before the unicorn virus. I hope you're doing well. And guys, this is it for me. I hope this video helped you a lot to understand this amazing free piece of software. And if you're not using Silky Pix Developer Studio Pro but looking for a software that helps editing your Fuji rough file, this is, my friend. Okay, you don't need the local adjustment. You can do a fantastic global adjustment, export later as a TIFF, and use GIMP for free. Use Photoshop if you have it already, or use Affinity Photo and do local adjustment there. So easy. Or you don't. I mean, generally, if you have a already good photo, I don't think the local adjustment is necessary. And if the Silky Pics guys listening to this video, take notes, because as you can clearly see, every time I made a change, it never stopped. It went fast like a rocket man. So I hope your software become like that one day, because you have a fantastic, proper software that needs the speed, the need for speed, man. All right, I'm going to stop right there. I think I'm talking too much and this is going way out of line. I hope you guys well. Subscribe to my channel. Love you all. Bye-bye.